What's up, audit fans? I know a lot of you out there are getting ready for your professional qualification exams, whether that's in the US, the ACCA F8 exam is coming up, and the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand AAA module exam is coming up. So today we're going to cover my 5 top tips for acing your professional qualification exam. Let's get into it. Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Amanda. I really do love audit and I teach audit at a major Australian university. So let's dive into my 5 tips. Tip number 1, look at the learning objectives for your course or module. Now, these learning objectives are not just about making sure that you remember specific knowledge. Look for keywords related to something that we call Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy explains what we expect students to do at basic levels, at medium or intermediate levels, and at advanced levels. So at entry level, for example, university degrees, it is to understand something, to remember something, to know something. As we get into professional qualifications, then those verbs, those learning objectives become much more complex. Things like analyze, explain, design, critically evaluate. Look for those verbs because those verbs in your learning objectives will tell you what they're going to try and assess you on in your exam. If it was something like critically analyze changes in the audit environment or know how to apply auditing standards, if you can look at those objectives, identify the verb, you'll be able to try and anticipate the sorts of tasks they're going to give you in the exam. Tip number 2 relates to the types of activities you may have been asked to do. If your professional qualification includes some workshops or homework, look at those questions and work backwards. What's happening in the question? What does it ask you to do? What information do you need? What learning objective for the particular program or course is it related to? We don't usually just set homework questions or workshop tasks because we like to. Each task has a specific purpose. So if you can identify that purpose, that'll help you figure out, again, what they're going to ask you in the exam. Tip number 3 is going to be to see if you can find past papers. Now that's not always the case. I don't give out past papers to my university level subjects, but some professional qualification programs do. ACCA, for example, has all of its past papers and solution guides on their website. I'll pop a link in the description below. Chartered Accountants candidates often will get some past papers to look at. When you're looking at past exams, be careful in going too far back. The risk with going too far back is that those exams may be based on old content as well as the solution guides. Probably in something like audit where regulation changes fairly frequently, I wouldn't go back maybe 2, 3 or 4 years. Any longer than that 4-year period, I'd probably steer clear from. Some professional qualifications actually have guides written by their examiners about how to pass the exam and reports about exam performance. If you go to the ACCA website, for example, these are freely available. One of the most common things I see in these reports is the plea to candidates to stop rote learning. Rote learning is just memorization. And sure, we need to memorize some stuff. You need to know that the assertions are existence, occurrence, accuracy, valuation, allocation, completeness, cutoff, rights and obligations, and presentation, but you need to know what they mean. So steer clear of rote learning, memorizing facts just for fact's sake. These exams are going to be practically based. Almost all of your learning objectives will require something like apply, explain, evaluate, design, which means you can't just regurgitate something that you've learned off a lecture slide, off a textbook, or somewhere else. So the key is going to be, can you apply that knowledge in a practical situation? What I also see really as the common theme in professional qualification exams is that these exams require you to use case information to be able to actually answer the question. So it's not just asking you theory stuff, it's a case and then taking the theory and applying them and matching them together. Check out my other video on how to answer case-based exams for my tips on how to really nail it when you're making those responses. Now, in order to be able to answer these case-based practical questions, you also need to know how all of the audit topics actually link together. It's no point in just knowing assertions and then the audit risk model and then control risk. You need to know how the whole spider web of audit fits together. Now, concept mapping is one thing that I do to try and help make sense of that. I'll link you to some concept maps so you can see what I mean. Every concept map is different that every single person draws, so practice drawing concept maps so that when a question asks you about assertions, you're also thinking about other related topics. My fifth and final tip is to know your standards. Now, this is really important because the standards are the foundation of audit. They guide us in our activities. When you're referring to the standards, make sure you always refer to the standard number and a paragraph. It's always better to be specific, to show to the markers that you know exactly which part of the standard applies to this particular question or this particular problem. When you're referencing the paragraph, always make sure you refer to a paragraph in the required section. So those are just the plain numbered paragraphs. Don't use an A paragraph, so 560 paragraph A5, for example, because those paragraphs are simply explanatory material. They're not the bit that the auditors are required to do. Now, when you're referring to paragraphs, you might pick one specific paragraph or pick a narrow range, ASA 560, paragraph 6 to 9. Don't say something like ASA 560, paragraph 6 to 22. That's taking your ability to show them you know exactly where to find it to, yeah, I'm not quite sure, so I'm going to list a whole number. That is not the way to go, and we can see through that quite quickly. So make sure when you're referring to your standards, you use the standard number and the paragraph number in a single paragraph or a narrow range. You may then choose to add explanatory paragraphs after that, but always start with the required paragraphs. Now, a big question is, do I need to know my accounting standards to go with my audit standards? And that's a really good question that you should ask to your professional association. For example, in ACCA, they say one of the big issues is that students know the audit standards, but they don't know the IFRS accounting standards. In the AAA subject, the audit module, there is some knowledge required of the audit, of the accounting standards, but not to that same extent. So check with your professional qualification body because they will tell you whether you need to be able to reference specifically a standard number related to the financial reporting or the accounting standards. Make sure that you check out my entire series on answering exams that have limited space. If there's open booklets, you could just write as much as you like, what to do in the reading time, and also how to organize your open book notes. That's a really important one because most professional qualification exams are open book. So these are my 5 top tips. If you have any other tips for candidates studying their professional exams, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. I'll link you to my full playlist on all of my videos related to how to study for audit and how to prepare yourself for an exam. Of course, as always, click to subscribe, thumbs up if you thought the video was useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye!